we want to be respectful of your desires regarding recording. Thank you. Okay, now, thank you, Nico.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Devin is sorry that she's not able to be here. So, Devin and I have been traveling for 6 months, and we have been remarkably healthy considering. I mean, Devin did get COVID once during those travels, which was very inconvenient since we were living in a van mostly for the past 6 months, traveling around teaching at Insight Meditation Society and at Spirit Rock and at smaller Dharma centers like Insight San Diego. And after 6 months of traveling, we got home on Thursday night and started to settle into the house that we rent from some very dear friends. And Friday morning, I went for a walk with our very dear friend who rents us this house, and he told us, we're selling the house. So we were so excited to settle in to a place and unpack our things, and it turns out we only really have a few months to settle into this place before we need to find a new place. And in the midst of this, we've decided to sell our van for various reasons, and there's a lot of instability, in our lives. I say this only, and then, Devin taught a full day long yesterday and then started to feel a little bit under the weather and very tired. And I say this only because I'm sure you can relate, maybe not to living in a van, but to the sense of things continually changing and needing to adapt and having the ground beneath your feet feel a little bit unstable. And then last night, I made a tactical error. I read the news before going to sleep, and I did not go to sleep. So I spent about 2 hours meditating, waiting to go to sleep. Nice to have a meditation practice, by the way, because you can just make use of your insomnia in the most wholesome possible ways. So I spent about 2 hours meditating before going to sleep. Then I finally went to sleep. And then 2 hours later, I woke up with a sense of deep dread about the wider state of the world and the much deeper sense of instability than the minor instability that we're experiencing in our individual lives. And it was really interesting. I got to spend 2 more hours meditating, which was a delight. It wasn't a delight, I'm lying. It was actually very difficult to be up in the middle of the night. Um, and I came upon this phrase. I love this phrase that I picked up from Ajahn Sumedho. It's like this. Right? I love this phrase. I find it so powerful, so inviting into my own experience, to a depth of my own experience. It's like this. And I was just sitting, sitting on my meditation cushion in the dark while Devin, thank goodness, was sleeping, and just repeating to myself, it's like this. The world is like this. The body, the discomfort of the body is like this. Dread about the state of the world is like this. Instability is like this. It's like this. And this to me is the cultivation of resilience, which is the theme that I want to talk about today. So, resilience is not about toughening up. From a Buddhist perspective, is not about toughening up. Resilience is about turning toward and maybe exploring, what is my relationship to dukkha, this beautiful Pali word that we all, I hope, love. Dukkha, which can mean like suffering, but it also can mean uncontrollability or mm, unsatisfactoriness or instability, dukkha. Every one of us experiences dukkha. What is your relationship to the inevitable dukkha that arises in your life, in your heart, in your mind? Do you find yourself turning away? And how do we learn to turn toward dukkha? It's the turning toward dukkha that is the actual cultivation of resilience. and stability. So I wanted to ask you all in the chat before we do a meditation together, what are you needing resilience with these days? And just share whatever's comfortable for you. But each one of us probably is needing resilience for something, the wider world, the smaller personal world. What are you needing resilience? What themes do you need resilience for? You can just type it into the chat. Yeah, building new relationships. Great. Building new relationships is one of these challenging, worthwhile things that we do, especially if we've uprooted, if we've moved to a new location. It takes some resilience. It takes some kind of sticking with it. What else? What are people needing resilience for these days? Uncertainty and instability at my workplace. I think a lot of people are experiencing that. Yeah. Just diagnosed with a new and painful physical condition. That's dukkha. That's actually what we call dukkha dukkha. Dukkha dukkha. It's like the suffering of suffering, just the raw difficulty. Listening and speaking authentically in conflict. Yeah, we need resilience for that. Not feeling overtaxed at the end of a workday. Very good. Everything. Yeah. Family life, community, and a world on fire. And it's interesting to me the way these feed into each other, right? The difficulty and instability of family feeding into the difficulty of community. And then our communities are so impacted by a world on fire. Every one of us is impacted, I think, by a world on fire. Parenting a young adult in these times, oh my goodness, to grow up now is a strange, strange thing. Yeah, thank you. Good. So it's nice to, I mean, for me, it's helpful to just get a sense of where people are at, what people are feeling, what people are working with. And it's nice, I think, for you to begin to explore, what am I working with? What am I bringing into the meditation today, into the community today? And how do we all hold this for each other, with each other? A last one here, where to put my energy that will be most supportive to affect positive change. Thank you. Yeah. So, keeping these in mind, holding this in our attention, perhaps we could do a little meditation together. And so, you might find a nice, comfortable meditation posture. I always say it doesn't have to be perfect meditation posture. Often we have these images of statues. You're not actually a statue, you have a living body. So finding a posture that feels at ease for you. It's nice to have a little bit of uprightness in the spine, so that there's a feeling of wakefulness. That said, if you fall asleep during my meditation, I feel like I have accomplished something great, because so many of us come into meditation exhausted, you know. So don't worry if you fall asleep. If you need to lie down in the middle of meditation, I celebrate that. Whatever is going to be the most supportive for you for this about 25 minutes or so. So, finding a posture that really works for you, finding a posture that's supportive, perhaps allowing your eyes to close or just softening your gaze. And you could just take a couple of deeper breaths if that's supportive for you. Really feeling the breath move into your body as you breathe in and move out of your body as you breathe out. Once you've taken those deeper breaths, just allow your breath to find a natural rhythm. And you could bring a warm awareness, a kind attention to the whole experience of your body, just sensing this body as it is receiving the sensations of this living body. And we'll spend a couple of minutes in silence here, just settling in and receiving. And you could simply receive whatever is happening in your experience now and the experience of the body, the heart, your mind, and whatever you find, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, whether it's ease, whether it's difficulty, you could just wrap it in this warm awareness, meet it with this kind attention. Whatever you're finding here in the body, the heart, the mind, you might greet it with a sense of friendliness. And if it's useful to you, you may be just applying this phrase. It's like this. These physical sensations, it's like this. The body is like this. Physical pain is like this. Discomfort, joy, pleasant, it's like this. An itch on the nose, it's like this. Or in the realm of the heart, irritation is like this. Sadness, contentment, whatever is arising in your experience, passing through your experience, you might just note it, saying silently to yourself, it's like this. Right now, it's like this. You might notice the tired mind is like this. The distracted mind, it's like this. The focused mind, the contented mind, it's like this. It doesn't matter what is happening in the body, in your heart, in your mind. And what we're teaching here, maybe all we're teaching here, is the cultivation of an attitude toward experience. We're not trying to control experience. We're not trying to make ourselves feel a particular way. Letting go, turning toward, it's like this. And now with some kind of sweetness, a gentleness, you might, if it's appropriate for you, turn your awareness towards something that's mildly difficult. You don't have to dive into it. You certainly don't have to solve it. You're just receiving its presence. It's like you're nodding to someone across the room, acknowledging. And again, this could be a physical sensation, it could be an emotion, it could be a thought or a habit, a situation in your life. And letting it arrive for you, letting it take center stage for a moment, wrapping it in this warm awareness, this kind attention, softening with what's difficult. And if the phrase is helpful, you might just acknowledge it's like this, this sensation or this situation. Right now, it's like this. And if at any point turning toward difficulty becomes overwhelming or too much, just let it go and maybe come back to an anchor that feels supportive for you. It could be your breath, could be your sit bones on your chair or your cushion, could be your feet. Find a way to ground yourself, stabilize your attention. And you could stay there for the rest of the meditation, just stabilizing, grounding. That would be perfectly appropriate, even beautiful. And if you find yourself stable again and focused again, and you're ready, really ready, you could call up again something that is difficult in the body, in the heart, in the mind, and see if you can wrap that reality in a kind of blanket of warm awareness, kind attention. And if you're liking the phrase, just recognizing it's like this. And so, this simple turning toward and this grounding down, this is the cultivation of resilience. Nothing to be forced. It's just a willingness to stay. It's a willingness to turn toward what is true rather than to skip around or turn away or squirm out of it. This turning toward with warmth, with friendliness, is the cultivation of resilience. Good. Now you might take a couple of deeper breaths again, if that's comfortable for you. Let your body begin to rock. Let your body begin to move, stretch. You could open your eyes. And as you open your eyes, as you begin to move your body, seeing if you can maintain this continuity of awareness and this attitude of staying with, being with your experience. So in meditation and stillness, we train this attitude and this ability to stay with what is happening. And then we want to nudge that into all of the moments of our days. We, in some sense, we want to have no distinction at all between our sitting meditation and our driving meditation, or our riding the bus meditation, or our getting into a conflict with our beloved life partner meditation, or whatever, or doing the dishes meditation, or everything. We want everything in our life. We want to bring this awareness with us. We want to bring this attitude of allowing and of turning toward. We want to bring it into everything that we're doing. So that there's a continuity of awareness that we cultivate. We cultivate it in our stillness. We cultivate it in our movement. We cultivate it in our listening, in our speaking, in our emailing, in our, God help us all, reading the news, cultivating this continuity of awareness. Yeah, it is possible, and it becomes more possible. The more we do the seated meditation, the walking meditation, the more this continuity becomes accessible to us. It becomes who we are, what we are. So I thought I'd offer some thoughts about resilience. I've been offering thoughts about resilience already, but I'll tell you a little story too. So I started practicing in the Insight tradition. I love how at Insight San Diego you list all of the different names. I never know what to call this, the Theravada tradition, the Insight meditation tradition, the Vipassana tradition, the early Buddhist tradition. We've got at least four names that are emphasizing different parts of what we do together. So I started in this early Buddhist insight Vipassana meditation when I was, 16, 17 years old. I got very deep into it very quickly, did a whole lot of retreat. It's like uh, incredibly passionate about the path from a very young age. And then in my early 20s, I moved to Colorado and I met a Zen teacher. And lo and behold, I ended up as a Zen monk. I ended up living in this monastery for 6 years through all of my 20s, basically, after college. And about 4 years into my monastic life, I was in Colorado, way up in the mountains, but there was a sister center in New York called Zen Mountain Monastery. And Zen Mountain Monastery was like just outside of Woodstock, New York. And there's a teacher there named Daido Roshi, who I loved his writing. I loved his talks. He's tough, old, sort of somewhat classical Zen master. He was a Korean War veteran, no BS, like straight to the point, very cutting personality. And I was stayed there for 2 weeks, and I was in a seminar, a weekend seminar during that 2 weeks with maybe there were 100 people there. And in Zen, you wear these robes and all the sort of signifiers. And I had the different kinds of robes. Everybody knew I was not from this place. I was from some other place. And there's a little bit of a pressure in that culture to represent your community well and kind of your teacher well. And so I had been very silent in this seminar of 100 people, but I had this burning question that had almost nothing to do with what Daitoroshi was talking about. And I went back and forth in my mind. Do I ask this question? Do I not ask this question? Finally, I raised my hand and he called on me and I asked Daitoroshi, at this point, I think I was 24, maybe 25 years old. I asked Daido Roshi, if you had one piece of advice for a young Zen practitioner, but we could say meditation practitioner, insight practitioner, if you had one piece of advice for a young practitioner, what would it be? And without missing a beat, and this is all he said, no elaboration, without missing a beat, he said, 9 times knocked down, 10 times get up. 9 times knocked down, 10 times get up. That's resilience. What I loved about that instruction at the time, what I love about it, that instruction to this day is he did not say, don't get knocked down. You will get knocked down. That's the implication of the teaching. You will get knocked down. Life will smack you around. You will fall left, you will fall right, then backward, then forward. But 9 times you get knocked down, 10 times you get up. And so living in the monastery was a training in this. In the monastery where I lived in the mountains of Colorado, we woke up in the morning at 3:30. We worked long shifts on the temple grounds. We had all of these ascetic practices, wearing robes, no socks in the winter. It's minus 10 degrees and snowing, and you're walking around in your flip flops. So no socks in the wind, no personal space in Zen monasteries. It's like no personal space. You do everything together. You wake up together, you meditate together, you do chanting and bowing together, you eat together, you work together. Everything is done as a group, and everything is done with energy and attention. There's this word in Japanese, gambate. It's this like total wholehearted commitment to every moment. So it's like when you're chopping carrots, you give the chopping of the carrots your total attention, your total wholeheartedness. You're building resilience. Everything that you are doing in the monastery is the cultivation of a kind of way of being, an attitude, a physicality of building resilience. And in the context of the monastery, this mostly work. I say mostly because uh, people are weird. I don't mean individuals, I mean everyone. I'm weird. We're weird, and we will make something out of anything. And the ego structures get involved, and we go through phases of being whatever it is, arrogant about the situation, and then insecure about the situation. But whatever. Mostly it worked, right? And mostly it worked because we were isolated. It was really, pre-cell phone days. We were protected, sheltered from the kind of onslaught of the wider culture, the culture of contempt, the culture of perfectionism, this kind of cruelty that is running through our now, even more so, it's running amok through our culture. And we were living together in a collective. We were the emphasis was, actually not so much on personal experience, the emphasis was on your contribution to the whole. There was a deep sense of belonging, and in that context of being together, we could push ourselves and we could be pushed. We could do really difficult things. Coming out of the monastery, I think 2 things really struck me. I came out of the monastery, I got married, we moved into a house in a neighborhood in Southern Oregon. W I started graduate school. Devin, my wife, started teaching, AP English in a high school. We moved into this mainstream world, right? So 2 things struck me coming out of the monastery. The first was isolation. I felt profoundly lonely. And I remember in particular one moment, I had just finished writing a paper for my master's program in counseling psychology before I ended up going and getting a PhD. I was in a master's program. I just finished writing a paper and I was sitting on our couch in our living room, and my mind was drifting. I was a little bit tired. I was a little bit hazy. And I had this thought: every single house on this block has its own blender. Why? It like from my context, from my experience, it almost broke my brain. Like, why does every house on this block have its own blender? How does that make a bit of sense? We tried to share the internet. Our neighbors had internet. We moved in. We asked them if we could pay half of their internet bill and share the internet. And they did it for about a month, but then they got really worried and contracted, and they had unlimited internet, but they got very scared that somehow we were gonna interfere with their internet. So I was feeling so lonely. We're so isolated in mainstream culture, and the more bought into the dominant culture you are, the more isolated I think you become. In the second, I was very shocked by the fragility, like the personal fragility that I encountered in people. People seem to like fall apart over the smallest things. One example, I was in a class. It was literally a class on multiculturalism for my master's program, and a white student said something that was kind of not super informed or educated, and the professor very gently and very kindly kind of called her in, said, "Oh, well, maybe we could talk about it different." And this person fell apart. They got really defensive, and they left the classroom. It's kind of fragility. It's like the opposite of resilience. And as I got deeper into the culture, as I left the monastery, not only physically left the monastery, but psychologically left the monastery, I started to notice something else. And this one really surprised me. I became more fragile. The further I got from the monastery and living in community, I became also more fragile. It's not an individual problem. So what's going on? I really spent a lot of time trying to figure this out. What is going on? And I think actually hyper individualism. So I guess a note. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with individualism. Right? There's this whole thing of like individual cultures and collectivist cultures. And some people think individualist cultures are better, and some people think collectivist cultures are better. I think we're all on a range between individualism and collectivism, and it's very difficult to say something is better. Everything has its advantages and its disadvantages within balance. But hyper individualism is not in balance. And that is what we are seeing played out on a wide scale right now, politically, socially, culturally, but even 15 years ago, what I'm talking about, hyper individualism and fragility go together. They are two sides of the same coin. We lose our place in the collective, then we lose our resiliency, and vice versa. When we lose our resiliency, it's very difficult to be a part of a collective. And so I think for us in a hyper individualistic culture and in a social and societal moment where there's a lot of shaking and instability, we need to build resilience from the ground up. As I started to teach, I started to teach maybe 12 or 13 years ago in the insight meditation tradition. I brought this kind of Zen intensity into my early teachings, and boy, did that not work at all because we didn't have the context. We don't have the context. We don't have that assumed belonging. We don't have that deep sense of commitment to each other that one has in a monastery. And so because we don't have that belonging to each other, we're not together in a situation of transformative intensity. We can't we can't do that intensity, I don't think, in our daily lives. Not because we're somehow deficient or we're weak, but we can't do it to ourselves. Like we just get tangled up. If we try to push, we contract. We don't end up growing. We end up actually shrinking. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, well, then what do we do? Like, if it's not the Zen intensity that was helpful for me in a monastery, what is it that helps people build resilience in the lives they're actually living? And of course, I mean, if the problem is hyper individualism and that's what's leading to fragility, then the answer would be we lean into community. So, congratulations. You're very smart. You're very smart to be joining on a Sunday morning, leaning into community, like taking a giant step in the direction of solving the problem, I think. And if you stick around long enough, you'll notice the community can be pretty rough. Like it is not easy to be around other human beings. So just an example from the monastery, just in case that in case you think the monastery is like this amazing, safe, easy place to be, I'll tell you a story from the monastery. So I was work leader in the monastery, and then there's these different positions that you rotate through. But I was work leader for a few years, I think from the age of like 24 to 27. So I was young. And the people living at the monastery and coming to the monastery, and especially people who were coming from the outside world, the range of ages was probably 22 to 85 or 90 or something like that. And most people coming to the monastery from the outside were coming from careers where they were kind of in charge. Like people would come in for a 3-month retreat, but in their regular life, they were a neurosurgeon or they were running an academic department. And so they come into the work meeting and they'd have to deal with me telling them what to do, which was an inherently tense situation. Me being younger, really knowing less about the world, knowing less about leadership for sure. And so my way of dealing with this was to get very, scare quotes, confident and organized. So one day, one big problem at the monastery, we're living in the forest, in the mountains, in Colorado. Fire danger was a huge problem for us. And so we were putting a lot of our resources into mitigation, into fire mitigation, giving ourselves a big padding, like thinning out the forest all around the monastery because there hadn't been a fire, a healthy fire that had come through in 100 years. And so we needed to kind of make the forest as if a fire had come through, which means taking out all the underbrush and thinning out all the trees and leaving the big healthy ones and taking out the younger ones. And took a tremendous amount of work and energy and money and time. And one day I had arranged for 25 college students to come and volunteer to haul underbrush and logs. And I had, I think, 4 guys with, professionals with chainsaws who were They were going to be sawing all day long and cutting trees and cutting branches. And these college kids were going to be dragging branches around and stacking wood. We heated the monastery with wood fire, so that was a big deal. And I was downloading my there were like spreadsheets. I had everything under control. And I was downloading my vision to maybe 14 people during the work meeting, and I was psyching up the troops, and I was telling everybody what your job is. And, you're going to be running this crew, and you're going to be running this crew, and you're going to have 5 college students over here. And this guy named, I'm going to call him Anthony. It's not his real name. This guy named Anthony raised his hand and said, "What time is lunch?" Little background. Anthony was in like his 50s, ran a bookstore in a major American city, owned a bookstore in a major American city. He was a conspiracy theorist in a big way. He had a very red hot temper, explosive personality. And without taking any of this into account, I said to Anthony, "Lunch? Who cares what time lunch is? We are going to move mountains." And I continued to be very inspiring. So I wrapped up the meeting. Everybody split off and went to their separate ways to do their separate jobs. And I was walking out of the work meeting room, and Anthony came up behind me, grabbed me by the shoulder, spun me around, threw me against the wall, and started to say things into my face. And I had this he was actually holding my shirt and shaking me while he was saying things. And I had this really vivid moment, the kind of moment that you have like during a car accident or some like very extreme thing that's happening where everything slowed way down. And I was noticing these vivid details. Like I could see that Anthony's face was very dark red, and that there was like a vein that was kind of thumping on his forehead, and there was a bee of sweat. Like he was very, very upset, and he was saying things to me like, "If you ever speak to me that way again, I will murder you." And I had this moment. We were also meditating, I think 6 hours a day or something at this point in the year cycle. So sometimes in the monastery you're meditating more, sometimes less. But this is one of those periods where there was a lot of meditation happening, and my mind went into this mindfulness, and I started to track back what happened, what is going on. This was not ordinary behavior for the monastery, just for the record, right? And I tracked back and I tracked back and I tracked back, and I realized, oh, Anthony is like a super hot firecracker. He's really sensitive actually under all of that bluster. And I just humiliated him in front of like 14 people. It's not what I meant to do, but it is certainly what I did. And right in the middle of all of this, I had this moment of softening. I felt my own body kind of just relax. And I said to Anthony, "I'm sorry. I messed up. Not my best moment." And Anthony looked very confused. There's a long pause, and then he dropped my shirt and he just walked away. So, a couple things here. One, oh, well, Anthony did get thrown out of the monastery later. I did not rat him out for that, but he did a few other things that were not so great. So he did have to leave eventually. That was not exactly acceptable behavior for a Buddhist monk. Couple of things. One, community is rough. People, I mean, at Inside San Diego, I'm virtually certain that you're not throwing each other up against walls. And yet, maybe sometimes you want to, right? And the closer you get into community, the more difficult community is. God help you if you join the board. even if you're like a pretty serious volunteer, I've been on many boards. I love board service. I am not knocking board service. It's one of the best things that you can do for Insight San Diego. If you've got the skills, you should join the board and get ready. Get ready for difficulty, get ready for disagreements, get ready for tensions, because community is rough. And yet, community is essential to our path of wholeness, to our path to building resilience. I want to say, you probably cannot build resilience without participating in community. Overcoming hyper-individualism requires you to be together with others. And coming together is what puts like a foundation under our feet in times of instability. It starts to bring us from this place of fragmentation to something like wholeness, this shared purpose that we can have with others. We can develop relationships with like-minded friends. We can have real conversations, we hope, in communities like this. We can talk about the real stuff that's actually important to us and that is onward leading on the path. And we hope that our friends in Community Insight San Diego and Dharma community in general, we hope they are working on their stuff. It's not that they don't have their quirks and their difficulties and their irritations, but probably, hopefully, they are here to look. And that's kind of unusual in the world. That's a precious discovery, to be around people that actually want to look at their own funny quirks, weirdness, shadow. And so community is the answer, but in order to participate in community, we'll probably need to build up a tolerance, a kind of attitude toward difficulty, and we do that in meditation. I don't know how anybody is in community without meditating. It seems so necessary to me. Maybe prayer. I like prayer too. God, give me the patience to deal with this meeting as we repeat again the same material we just went over for 30 minutes. I'm not really a God person, but I still say it to myself. So we can train ourselves to be more resilient through meditation. We just did that in the meditation that we did together earlier, right? But it takes a certain kind of attitude, the cultivation of a certain kind of attitude. So when I was in my PhD, I learned many wonderful things, but one that I really like is this essentially three kinds of parenting. So if you're a parent, this might be helpful, but there's three kinds of parenting that they've discovered through the research. The first is called permissive parenting. Permissive parenting, you just let kids do what they want. It's so nice. It's so easy in the short run. You just let kids kind of run the house. If they don't want to go to bed, you don't make them go to bed. And they want to keep watching TV, you let them keep watching TV. And permissive parenting is not associated with excellent outcomes for children, right? Kids end up not resilient. Let's call it that. There's another kind of parenting that's the opposite side of the spectrum. So permissive parenting is all the way over here. Authoritarian parenting is all the way over here. Authoritarian parenting is like, you don't really care what your kid wants or who they are or what kind of agency they want to have in the world. It's like they want to play soccer, but you're going to make them play piano. because you have an idea of who this child should be and you're going to make them that way. That's authoritarian parenting. Authoritarian parenting is also not associated with excellent outcomes for most kids. It doesn't really lead to resilience. Then there's a middle way, which is very Buddhist, isn't it? Right? There's a middle way. There's a balance between permissive parenting and authoritative parenting authoritarian parenting. It's called authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting is by far the most difficult way to be a parent. Probably what most of us are shooting for as a parent. Authoritative parenting is where you're listening. You're taking in everything that your child is saying to you. You're trying to understand who they are and who they want to be. And you also recognize that you're the adult in the room. And sometimes they just need to go to bed or eat their vegetables. And there's this continual balance between letting them run and do their thing and shaping their behavior because they need to learn how to, be an adult in society with others, right? Authoritative parenting is by far associated with the best results for kids. Even they've done longitudinal studies now. So even like tracking people over 20 or 30 years, people who are from authoritative parenting homes, get the highest degrees, they have the highest incomes. These are things that are easy to measure. They also have more emotional intelligence. They have stronger relationships with other people. They get divorced less. All of these things are associated with this very difficult balance of helping kids understand who they are in the world. So it's not only the most complex parenting style, it's also like, how can we learn to be this way for ourselves? And a lot of what I think we're doing in meditation and in the study of Dharma is actually a kind of reparenting. We're showing up for ourselves every time we decide not to follow the same old story that we have told ourselves again and again and again for the last 10 years. And we say, thank you very much. You're very welcome here. I'm not getting rid of you. And what if we just came back to our breath for a moment? Okay. What if we came back to our breath again? Wonderful. That's like authoritative parenting. There's a lot of grace in there. There's gentleness in there, but there's also this kind of firmness. We're threading the needle between self-denial and self-indulgence. And we're doing it with a lot of warmth, a basic friendliness toward our experience. This is like the contemporary middle way. All right, so coming to the end of this me talking thing, but we lean into community, right? Leaning into community breaks down our hyper individualism, the kind of spell of me. It strengthens our meditation practice, and that's a good thing. Meditating with others is how we cultivate our own meditation, how we build our own meditation. And that's great because you're going to need meditation and the cultivation of these qualities of the heart in order to navigate the inherent difficulty of humans and of being in community together. And so we weave these, right? We cultivate the heart of goodness. We do it together. Through the cultivation of the heart of goodness, we can stay together, even in irritation, impatience, difficulty, doing things together. It's always together. And in that sense, it's just like being in the monastery. Okay, maybe we could just sit. We just sit for a minute or two. kind of let all those words wash through, and then we'll have time for some questions or comments. Okay, good. So I really appreciate getting other people's voices in the room, especially when I've been talking for a long time. So if you could, raise your Zoom hand, that's the easiest. If you can't find your Zoom hand, you could just raise your physical hand and I'll probably see you. There's not too many people. There's only one page of Zoom people for me, so I could probably see you. If you're feeling kind of shy, um, you can always type in a question or a comment and I'll read it out. And if you're feeling very shy, you could direct message me and I'll read out the question or the comment, but I won't say your name. And I'm seeing there was a comment during the talk. So, with the current political and social upheaval, I am challenged to one, process my emotional agitation wisely. Two, think the people who are affected most with compassion, not thinking of the perpetrators first with anger, yes. Three, find opportunities to express my moral convictions in positive action. Yeah, great. Based on an online article. Maybe we start with that. That's a really great uh, comment and question. So, there's a three-part model that I love. I just downloaded a ton of information, but now I'm going to do some more. So, a three-part model that I love that comes from a Zen teacher named Bernie Glassman. And so I'll tell you a little bit about Bernie Glassman, and I'll tell you a little bit about this model. So Bernie studied with really a great Japanese teacher named Maizumi Roshi. In the early 1970s, Maizumi Roshi came to Los Angeles and he started teaching Westerners. And there was a really big question about whether Westerners could have awakening. There was some ethnocentricity on the part of the Japanese. There was some doubt on the part of like the young hippies that were coming to the center. Like maybe it really could only be for monastics, or maybe it could only be for those who grew up in a Buddhist culture. And so Bernie Glassman was the first person in Maizumi Roshi's Sangha to have what's called Kensho, which is like a really deep spiritual awakening that changed his whole perspective on life. And he went from being an engineer um, to dropping everything and being a Zen teacher, and then dropping everything again, where he took off his robes, he left the center with Maizumi Roshi's blessing, and he started a bakery in Yonkers, New York, for people coming out of prison or who were living on the street. It's called the Grayston Bakery. And he got a lot of pushback from people. Like, you're a Zen teacher. You're supposed to be teaching people to meditate. What's with this, all this do gooding out in the world? And he said, this is my Dharma, right? This is my Dharma. Being on the street with people is my Dharma. And so that's a little background on Bernie Glassman. He meditated, he taught meditation for his entire life, but he always was engaged with people who were marginalized. He was always engaged with people who were struggling the most impacted by society's prejudices and who gets to be included and who is excluded. Bernie, who died maybe 5 years ago, had a three-part model. First step is don't know. So he called it don't know mind, which is a classic Zen. Don't know mind. We just don't, we abide in the state of not knowing. that is a kind of potentiality. It's not confusion, right? Don't know mind is this kind of like the awareness that is present right before you make a decision, right before you say the thing, right before you express a conviction. There's this sense of like just presencing with things as they are. That's the don't know mind. When we really get a sense of don't know, and another form of don't know mind is maybe I'm wrong, right? There's lots of different ways to see this. Maybe I'm wrong. But we don't stop with this kind of relativism. Second is bearing witness. Bearing witness is really receiving the suffering of the world. So another thing that Bernie did was he led a yearly meditation retreat in Auschwitz called the Bearing Witness Retreat. And he would bring groups of people together and they would meditate in the concentration camp, bearing witness to the suffering of the world, to the truth of human cruelty. So step 2 is bearing witness. Number 1, an open, spacious not knowing. Number 2, the compassionate bearing witness to the way things really are, to the people who are most impacted. And that too is not enough because there's always number 3, which culminates in compassionate action. So number 3 is compassionate action. We need to find a way to participate. Human beings are inherently participatory. Everything you are doing is participation. How do you make that participation wise and impactful and effective? And this is where conviction comes in. So it's not that we need to be free of our convictions and only hang out and don't know mind. It's these balance each other, right? Even as we act out of conviction, we maintain the sense of possibility, potential, not knowing, bearing witness. Even as we bear witness, we still are in continuous action. So they're all 3 balancing each other out. I find this to be such a helpful model for the times that we're living in. Thanks for that. Somebody's asking me if there's a way for attendees to send Dana without using Venmo. Here, I'll just paste in. We can do PayPal. That's not it. So if PayPal is easier, we can do this. Okay. Yeah, so you can send PayPal to me through that link. What else? We have, 5 minutes, so we have time for another question, maybe even 2 if I can give a short answer, which is not my greatest gift. Yes, I'll be.
In the write-up in our uh, computers about today's talk, I don't remember the title, but it was something about slug. Like, how do we slug through the difficulty that we're all faced with right now?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't wanna put that on you if that wasn't what you were gonna talk about, but I also
Oh, great.
have an answer if you have one.
Yeah, how do we slog through the mess that we're all living in right now? And I would say probably each one of us here is impacted by the systemic harm that is moving through our, not just our government, our companies, our universities, our communities, our hometowns, all of this. We're all impacted by what is going on right now. So, I mean, I think my talk is an attempt to kind of get to that. It's like we need to be cultivating resilience. Each one of us needs to be cultivating resilience. I think resilience is a turning toward what is happening with stability. And so every one of us will have moments where we're not stable. I mean, I felt a lot of dread last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, just from 1 to 3, right? So a lot of dread. Oh, the world is falling apart. Much of what I care about is being dismantled and across such a wide variety of domains. It's astonishing, right? So turning toward that dread, there's a lot of tendency to just not want to feel it, to not want to deal with it. But turning toward that dread and kind of wrapping it in a warm awareness and a kind attention, maybe using the wisdom phrase like, it's like this. Very slowly, very gradually, if we give ourselves the time, we can begin to stabilize in that. Oh, yeah. Maybe the dread doesn't go away completely, but there can be this sense of accompanying the dread, right? Like shepherding the dread, a sense of, and then it becomes energy. That dread becomes the energy of action, that we can make use of that energy. So instead of the dread stopping us, it actually becomes our motivation to do something. And then for each one of us, what we do is small. It's always small. And we have to probably be realistic about what our contribution is. And yet we need to contribute something, so it can be contributing money. It can be contributing volunteer hours. It can be contributing in our smaller communities of just like being with people as they face this difficulty, being a listening ear, giving them our attention. It can be wider. It can be phone banking. It can be sending letters. It can be being politically active on a wider scale. Be a joiner, right? Like you don't have to start your own nonprofit. Just like find somebody that is doing something good and put your energy and your money and your time behind what they are doing. And be the sort of do the grunt work of putting stamps on envelopes, or we don't do that anymore, but whatever it is, you just join something, you put your energy in there. And then the last thing I'll say is our role, I think, I consider myself a Buddhist or a meditation practitioner. Our role is to come in as fully integrated humans who are basically balanced. Now, we don't always feel balanced, but mostly we want to act from a place of energized calm. You go into nonprofits, there's a lot of crazy running around and anger and difficult emotions. And our role, I think, coming out of meditation is to be the person who is calm and kind and engaged and contributing. You don't go around telling everybody, oh, maybe don't be so mad. That doesn't really work. But you can be the one who's like coming in with some joy because you've done your meditation for the morning. Yeah,
Thank I understand now that you really had answered that question.
sure. There's still a good
I
question.
needed it concrete, so that helped me.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're coming to the end of our time here. I'll say one last thing. Dana. I've been asked to speak about Dana. So Dana is this beautiful Pali word, which means generosity. Dana is really just about offering in every aspect of your life. So everything that I just said is dana, offering your time, offering your energy, your attention. In this case, it's offering perhaps financial resources. So I'm an insight meditation teacher. After I got my PhD in counseling psychology, I was finally, after a 10-year process, I was offered the high paying job that I had been working toward for that entire time, and I turned it down. And when I turned down that job and even turned down a private practice of psychotherapy just to be a meditation teacher, I was very worried. Like, would I have enough? And the answer is I do. And that's a really good thing. Like, you don't have to worry about me not having the resources because people are continually supporting me to have the resources to be a full-time meditation teacher, which means you don't have to give out of obligation or guilt or worry. You could give just because you want to contribute to this. You want to contribute to people being full-time Dharma teachers. So that's the spirit of this. It's like, if you feel good about this, if you believe in this, if you want people to be able to do this, you just give because it feels good to give, not out of some kind of obligation or guilt or worry. And I think that's like a beautiful thing about the Dana system. So if you're called to, if it lifts your heart to be generous, you click on one of those links and you give finances. Or again, you volunteer at Inside San Diego, or you do something else that is cultivating this parami, this perfection, this beauty of dana, of generosity in some way in your life, because it's very, very important for the path. Okay, my dear friends,
Thank
so good to be here with you.
Everyone can come offline if you'd like to give a verbal thank you. Thank you, Nico. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you, Nico.
Thanks, Nico.
Tschüss. Amount.
Be well. We hope to see you at another Dharma talk or at the half-day retreat next weekend, insightsd.org. Nico's Venmo and PayPal is in the chat, or you can follow up with us as well. Take care.
Thank you, Gino.
Bye. 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 Bye.